The call lasted 9 seconds. No voice, no dial tone, just the faint, patient hum of a line that had no business being alive. On the maintenance terminal, the routing record showed a destination number K Klondike 52271, disconnected in November of 1963. 61 years ago. The engineer assumed it was a software ghost, a stray entry in old switching tables, so he traced it. He followed the copper out of the rack, through the floor, past the part of the building shown on the blueprints, and into a section of the structure that, according to every document ever filed, was never built. The Vandalia Exchange sits on the edge of Montgomery County, Ohio, a low brick building with no signage and a single working door. It was decommissioned in 1998. For 26 years it has held nothing but dust, dead relays, and rows of step-by-step switching equipment too obsolete to sell and too heavy to move. The phone company kept the lease for one reason. A fiber junction runs beneath the floor, and pulling it would have cost more than the building was worth. So the lights stayed off, the doors stayed locked, and the old electromechanical switches sat in the dark, disconnected from the public network for a quarter century. That is the part that matters. Disconnected. No power feed to the legacy racks. No reason for any of it to do anything at all. In October of this year, a network engineer named David Ellison was sent in to survey the fiber for a removal contract. Routine work. He brought a laptop, a flashlight, and a portable terminal to read whatever was still powered. What he found instead was a single rack, frame 7, quietly drawing current from a source no one could identify, and on its display a call log. Updating in real time. Here is the detail that should have ended the story before it began. The number the line kept connecting to, K Klondike 52271, was not just disconnected. It was disconnected in 1963, which is itself strange, because the Vandalia Exchange did not open until 1965. Read that again. The exchange was routing calls to a number that was retired 2 years before the exchange existed. That is not a glitch. A glitch repeats something that happened. This was routing calls to something that, by every timeline we have, never could have passed through this building in the first place. Ellison pulled the original installation records from the county archive. The exchange was commissioned in March 1965 to serve a planned industrial development north of the airport, a development that was approved, surveyed, and then quietly canceled. The factory was never built. The workers never came. But the exchange was completed anyway, fully wired, as if someone expected the lines to be needed. And one of those lines, K Klondike 52271, had a destination address on file, a street, a building number, a room. The street was real. The building number existed. The room did not. Ellison did what any careful engineer does. He went to the blueprints. The Vandalia Exchange has 2 filed sets of construction drawings, one from the 1965 build and a revision from 1971. They match almost perfectly. Almost. On the 1965 drawing, the north wall of the equipment hall is solid brick, marked as exterior. On the 1971 revision, that same wall shows a doorway. A doorway leading into a space the architects labeled only as Room C. There are no dimensions for Room C, no electrical plan, no purpose listed. It appears on one sheet and is missing from every other document in the file. No inspection record, no occupancy permit, no mention in the maintenance logs that span 30 years of operation. It is as though the room was added to a single drawing and then deliberately forgotten everywhere else. When Ellison walked the north wall of the equipment hall, measuring as he went, the interior length came up 4 feet short of the exterior. 4 feet of wall that contained something. He ran his light along the brick and found it not a door but a seam. A vertical line where the mortar changed color, where the brick had been laid by a different hand. Something was behind that wall, and frame 7's copper ran straight toward it. Tracing a line in an old step-by-step exchange is slow, deliberate work. Every connection is physical, a wire wrapped to a terminal, jumpered across a frame, soldered to the next stage. There is no software abstraction to hide behind. You follow the metal point to point, the way you'd follow a thread through a maze. Ellison started at frame 7 and worked outward. The line passed through the standard switching stages, exactly as a normal call would. Then, at the main distribution frame, it diverged. Instead of routing out to the cable vault and the public network, the jumper bent back. It dropped through a cable run in the floor, traveled the length of the equipment hall, and rose into the base of the north wall. The wall with the seam. The wall with 4 feet of nothing behind it. Ellison photographed every junction. He logged every terminal number. And as he traced the final segment, he noticed something about the wire itself. It was newer than everything around it. The exchange was built with cloth-insulated copper, the kind that turns brittle and gray with age. This last run was modern PVC-jacketed cable, the kind manufactured no earlier than the 1990s, which meant someone had been in the building long after it was sealed to lay it. The deeper question was never the wire. It was the electricity. A decommissioned exchange has no live power to its legacy racks. The phone company confirmed it in writing. The building's main feed was cut to a single circuit serving the fiber junction and the exterior lights. Frame 7 was not on that circuit. Ellison checked twice, then brought in an electrician to verify. The frame was drawing roughly 40 watts of steady current, and it was not coming from the grid. The electrician traced the supply to a conduit that, like the copper, vanished into the base of the north wall. Whatever powered frame 7 was on the other side of that brick, and it had been running continuously for as long as anyone could measure. The phone company's own monitoring showed the fiber junction's ambient power readings had carried a small, unexplained baseline draw since the building was sealed in 1998. 26 years of consumption from a source no one had ever located, ever billed, or ever switched off. The call log on frame 7 listed its most recent connection attempt with a timestamp from 3 days before Ellison arrived. The destination, every time, unchanged. Klondike 52271. The room that was never built. Before anyone opened the wall, Ellison did one more thing. He dumped the full call history from frame 7's memory, a register that should have held nothing, on a system that should have had no power. It held thousands of entries. Every one was a connection attempt to the same dead number. The earliest carried a date of November 22, 1963, the day the line was disconnected. The attempts continued, evenly spaced year after year, through decades when the building was supposedly dark and dead. There was no incoming origin on any of them, no caller. The exchange was not receiving calls and forwarding them. It was placing them, reaching out on its own toward a room behind a wall roughly once every 11 days for 61 years. Ellison sent the logs to 2 independent engineers. Both confirmed the format was authentic and the timestamps were internally consistent. Neither could explain how a memory register survived without power. One of them noticed something Ellison had missed. The 11-day interval was not random. It matched, almost exactly, the maintenance test cycle written into the original 1965 commissioning manual, a routine line check that a working exchange would run automatically. Frame 7 was not malfunctioning. It was still doing its job. It was simply the only part of the building that never learned it had been shut down. On the morning the wall was opened, 3 people were present: Ellison, a representative from the phone company, and a structural contractor with permission to remove 4 bricks. They chose a spot near the seam, low and out of sight, and worked carefully. The mortar came away cleanly. Behind it was not a void. It was a cavity perhaps 4 feet deep in the width of a narrow room, sealed on all sides. Inside, mounted to a small steel frame, sat a single piece of equipment. A line test set, a relay unit, and a power supply, of a design used in the 1960s but wired with the modern cable Ellison had traced. It was running. A small indicator lamp glowed steady amber. There was no phone, no desk, no furniture. Just the machine, faithfully checking a line that led nowhere, powered by a battery bank that the contractor's meter showed was still holding charge it had no source to receive. Bolted to the steel frame was a brass plate. It carried no name and no date, only a number stamped by hand. Klondike 52271. The address the exchange had been calling for 61 years was not a room someone had hidden. It was the machine that had been calling itself. The phone company's official position is that the cavity contained legacy test equipment, improperly documented, that should have been removed during decommissioning. That explanation accounts for the machine. It does not account for the power. It does not account for the modern cable laid in a building that was sealed and locked. It does not account for a relay set that places a call to itself every 11 days, or a memory register that survived 26 years with no feed, or a number disconnected 2 years before the exchange that called it was ever built. Ellison filed his report and submitted his photographs. The cavity was resealed pending further review. The equipment was tagged, scheduled for removal, and then, according to the work order, the removal was postponed indefinitely. No reason given. The line is still there. The amber lamp is still lit. And somewhere in that brick, on a schedule written down in 1965, a machine that no one switched on continues to reach out toward a number no one will answer. The contract to demolish the building was canceled this week. The official memo offers a single sentence of explanation. It reads, "Active service detected on line Klondike 52271. So here is what we're left with. A dead number. A room that was never built. A machine calling itself across 61 years of silence, and a phone company that just canceled the demolition. Was it a forgotten test set, or something someone wanted kept running? We want to hear your theory in the comments. If quiet, true stories like this keep you up at night, subscribe to Obscura Files and turn on notifications. The next file is already on the line.